Hello everyone and welcome back to our channel. Today we will be discussing the most important previous year questions of literary criticism for semester 3 DU. But if you are watching this from any other university, this can be useful for you as well since these are major authors who are part of the NEP framework. Now let us begin. Question number 1. Explain how Edmund Burke distinguishes the sublime from the beautiful in his essay A Philosophical Inquiry into the Origin of Our Ideas of the Sublime and Beautiful. On your screen, Burke's answer shows the sublime rooted in self-preservation and terror felt at a safe distance, while beauty comes from love and society. The sublime is vast, rugged and dark. Beauty is small, smooth and delicate. Screenshot this answer, examiners use it all the time. Question number 2. According to David Hume, beauty is not an objective quality but a product of individual perception, discussed with reference to of the standard of taste. Hume famously says that beauty exists only in the mind of the perceiver, yet he still believes a standard of taste is possible through delicacy, practice, comparison, and freedom from prejudice. Question number 3. The mind of the poet is the shred of platinum. Elaborate on T.S. Eliot's statement in Tradition and the Individual Talent. This is Eliot's impersonal theory, where the poet's mind acts like a catalyst that fuses emotions into poetry without being changed itself. It is a very commonly asked question. Question number 4. Write a brief note on Virginia Woolf's characterization of contemporary novelists as materialists in modern fiction. Woolf criticizes Bennett, Wells, and Galsworthy for focusing on external details instead of the inner life. Her famous line about life being a luminous halo comes up here. Question number 5. I. Richard argues that the Kantian account of the judgment of taste leads to the annexation of aesthetics to idealism. Write a brief note on Richard's critique of Kant's aesthetic theory. This explains why Richard calls the aesthetic state a phantom, rejecting Kant's idea of a separate, disinterested faculty of beauty. Question number 6. Paradox is the language appropriate and inevitable to poetry. Explain how Cleanth Brooke elucidates this in his analysis of poetry. Brooks uses Wordsworth and Donne to show that paradox is not decoration but the essential structure through which poetry communicates the truth. The answer is on your screen to check out right now. Question number 7. What condition does Hume identify as necessary for true taste in Of the Standard of Taste, and how do defects like prejudice or lack of practice hinder sound judgment in matters of beauty? This is basically Hume's 4 qualities of a good critic: delicacy of imagination, practice, comparison, and freedom from prejudice. Question number 8. The writer seems constrained by some powerful and unscrupulous tyrant. The tyrant is obeyed, the novel is done to a turn. Identify and comment on the given statement. This quote is from Woolf's modern fiction essay. It describes how convention forces novelists into artificial plots instead of psychological truth. A code identification question like this comes up almost every year, so don't skip this. Now let us move to the 20 mark section of our video. Question number 9. How does T.S. Eliot's idea of historical consciousness in Tradition and the Individual Talent shape the poet's relationship to tradition and originality? This answer covers Eliot's concept of the historical sense, the idea that all of European literature exists simultaneously, and how a truly new poem subtly changes the entire existing order of literature. It also connects this historical sense to his call for the poet's continual self-sacrifice and extinction of personality, linking directly back to the platinum analogy we saw in question number 3. It also explains why Eliot insists that originality is only ever measured against and achieved through deep immersion in the past rather than rebellion against it. Question number 10. How does Virginia Woolf focus on consciousness in modern fiction, reflect a new fluid notion of reality, and how does it depart from the conventions of earlier realist novel? Here Woolf's materialist critique is expanded with examples from Mrs. Dalloway, James Joyce's Ulysses, and Chekhov's Gusev, showing how modern fiction replaces plot, chronology, and external detail with the stream of consciousness technique. The answer walks through exactly how realist assumptions about an objective, externally verifiable world are overturned by Woolf's insistence that reality is constituted within subjective consciousness, and it ends with her famous declaration that everything is the proper stuff of fiction, since this compares realism and modernism directly. It's a favorite for both 10 and 20 marks variation, so screenshot this answer right now. Question number 11. Explain what I. Richards means by the phantom aesthetic state. discuss the implications of describing the aesthetic state as a phantom for literary criticism. This builds on question 5 but goes deeper into why Richard rejects Kant's separate aesthetic faculty and what it means for criticism if aesthetic experience is simply a finer organization of ordinary experience rather than something mystical and separate from life. This has strong implications for how we read Clive Bell too. So make sure you capture the full explanation on your screen. Question number 12. Why does Cleanth Brooks term paraphrase as a hearsay? Explain this argument with reference to the hearsay of paraphrase. Brooks argues that a poem's meaning cannot be separated from its structure, and that reducing a poem to a prose statement destroys what makes it a poem. The architectural metaphor of scaffolding versus the building itself is central here, along with the Keats example of beauty is truth, truth, beauty, and the contrast Brooks draws between the fixed denotative language of science and the open connotative language of poetry. Question number 13. Discuss the role of the connotative function of language in meaning making with reference to any two critics in your course. How do they challenge purely referential or denotative approaches to meaning? This answer pairs Richards and Brooks together, showing how both critics reject the idea that words have fixed dictionary meanings in poetry and instead treat words as a nexus or cluster of meaning, whose sense only emerges from the surrounding context. Question number 14. How do theories of literary criticism in the early 20th century assess the value and relevance of art to their society? This is a big picture synthesis question covering Richards, Eliot, Woolf and Brooks together, looking at how each of them justifies why literature still matters in a changing modern world. Richards through psychological organization, Eliot through cultural continuity, Woolf through fidelity to evolving consciousness and Brooks through the formal integration of experience. Because it draws on the entire syllabus and can be adapted to almost any relevance of criticism style questions, this is one of the most important questions to read. Question number 15. How does Burke relate the sublime to power and vastness, and in what ways does this association reflect broader social and philosophical ideas of his time? This expands on question 1, going into Burke's idea about wild animals, sovereign power, and even the fear associated with the divine, and connects all of this to 18th century political and scientific thought. This brings us to the end of today's 15 most repeated questions for literary criticism. If this video helped you, please like, share and subscribe to our channel. Thank you very much and we'll see you again in the next one.